The Ready to Learn Learning Triangle is a teaching tool. It addresses various learning styles and engages different senses. This workshop is based on these principles: view, read, and do.
Math. What a word. How many in this audience, when you say that, actually have a good feeling? How many of you loved math? That's usually the percentage. If we have one and the rest of us are like, oh, please, please, please. We're going to talk about math and how you can help your children actually like it a little bit better, and how you can be a good parent and help them prepare for when they enter school, that they're prepared to learn math. Now, you're talking to the woman who, when she first started college, she actually looked at, now at this point it wasn't computerized, but she was looking at the catalog and she was finding a degree, a career that she was going to use the rest of her life based on how little math classes she did not have to take. So I know how most of you feel. Mary feels a little bit differently, but math was something, by the time I think hit ninth grade, I asked a question and my teacher looked at me like, everyone knows that answer. And from then on, I just decided for myself that I didn't know math, I couldn't understand math, and so I didn't like math. As I went through college, I finally changed my career and had to take some math, and had some very good math teachers and math professors where I started to understand math. And I'm like the kind of person that, how come? How come? And so when I started understanding why math worked, it made a lot more sense to me. And so we are going to talk about math today. We're going to talk about that it can be fun, and you can use everyday experiences and everyday situations in your home to teach math concepts. And so also we're going to take the learning triangle that we've talked about in some other workshops about the viewing a show with a certain math concept, reviewing that concept with the children's book, and then doing an activity, a math-based activity. And you're going to actually leave going, I like math. So sit back and we're going to have lots of fun with math. One of the things that we have learned, and most teachers are actually incorporating into their classrooms, is a lot of times children and adults, when we're helping our children with their math, it's not the math problem that they don't understand, it's the question. How many of you have ever had that happen, Liz, is how do I answer a question if I don't know what it's talking about? So a lot of times it's the vocabulary. So we're going to talk about some basic vocabulary terms that really are math-centered. And we use them every day, but if you know these math terms, you can start pointing them out to your children as they're young, and then as they get in school, when they're like, I don't know this, you're like, oh yes you do, we practiced this when, and this is what it is. So I'm going to give you some basic information, some basic math terms. Now for all of these words, you can go to our website, KBYU11.org, go to the participation notebook, and under math, these terms will be here. And then you can remember how to use them in your home. The first one is a pattern. A pattern is something like Rachel's shirt. It's something that repeats itself at least 3 times. That's a true pattern, okay? So something that repeats itself at least 3 times. And she has some colors that keep repeating over and over and over again. Now, one thing that we know about numbers is they make a pattern, and a lot of classrooms now will have that number chart so the children will be able to see that pattern where it goes the 1s and then the 10s and the 20s and 30s. It's very easy for children to see patterns and then to let them see the patterns of the numbers. So patterns are something that repeat themselves at least 3 times. Now that's pretty simple, and we're like, yeah, I know that. Now the next one is sequence. And sometimes not only parents but children mix sequence and patterns up because a sequence can become a pattern. What is a sequence? A sequence is like my morning routine. The alarm goes off, I put it on snooze. The alarm goes off, I get up, I take my shower, I brush my teeth, I do everything I need to do. I try to find my keys. I look where I last put my keys. It's where one thing follows another. The seasons are a sequence. The alphabet is a sequence. And the one thing that I like to help people remember about a sequence is one thing follows another, but the first and the first and the last don't look like the middle. So like the alphabets, we know it goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but B does not look like A and it does not look like C. So when you're thinking of a sequence, remember that the things by it don't look like each other, but they have to be in a particular order, okay? Now this is where children get mixed up, and adults, is because my morning routine, after I do it over and over and over, becomes a pattern or a routine, but it's the whole sequence that becomes the pattern, okay? So does that make sense? And we're gonna do an activity, and sometimes it's a little bit harder when you start thinking, okay, is this a sequence or is it a pattern? Now, a one-to-one correspondence is something that children know automatically. They come innately with it. He has a bigger piece. He has more cookies. He's got more pizza. It is equal, okay? One-to-one means equal. The one thing that a lot of children have problems with, and as adults we need to make sure that we explain very clearly, is what do you want it to equal? If I said to Holly, I want you to give me a book. Well, what book do you want me to give you? The book that's in front of me, any book? What book do you need? And that's the one thing where a lot of teachers have said to me, children get very confused of what do you want? What do you want it to equal? When we get to one-to-one correspondence, we're doing with ratios, we're doing with fractions, and we're doing anything that you want it to match. So you need to be very clear of what do you want it to match. One-to-one correspondence sounds really easy, but once again, when we get to what's the question, how do you want me to answer it? Now the next thing is measuring. Once again, what are you going to measure? Measure is usually dividing something up and then taking a section and actually measuring it or comparing it. We measure time. I know today as I was driving here, I was measuring my gas tank. You know, where was it on that? Is it full or not? Usually it's not. So that's measuring, is we're usually comparing when we're measuring, okay? The next one is counting. How do you explain counting? How is that explained? Holly, I'm going to pick on you again. How do you define counting? Because we do it.
I usually just, when I'm talking to my 4-year-old, we're counting how many minutes you have to sit in timeout, or like there, or we'll count M&Ms, or like something physical that you can look at.
Okay.
And there's one.
All right. It is. We all count. I mean, that's the first thing most kids know. 1, 2, 3, or 2, 4, 8. It's giving something value. That's what counting is. And as Holly said, usually when children can see it, they can understand it better. But counting is just giving something value. Isn't that interesting? When we're counting, we're giving value. Sorting is putting like things together. Okay, when we sort, we put like things together. Now, I have a son, and he does not know how to sort his clothes. He puts his dirty clothes and his clean clothes all in a pile on the floor. He's not putting like things together. Once again, what do we want to sort? In one of the workshops, we read a story from Junie B. Jones, and the teacher asks them to make a picture of a farm animal. And they make all kinds of different animals. What do you want? What do you want to put together? That's what sorting is. Now let's see an everyday experience, and let's say that in the kitchen we're going to take each of those terms, and where do we use that in an everyday experience? First, with patterns. Liz, where do you find patterns in the kitchen where one thing repeats itself?
A lot of times plates will have the circle stripes.
Okay.
That are. in a pattern.
And what Liz said is I like that answer because children can see it. When we can see it, we can understand it. Usually when it's an abstract idea, children don't understand it as much. So when you can see the pattern. Okay, now sequencing, where one thing follows another. Where do we sequence in the kitchen? Holly?
When you're cooking.
Okay, yeah.
Following a recipe.
Following a recipe, yes. You just can't take eggs and flour and stick it in the oven and make cookies, right? In the kitchen is one of the best places to use math, to teach math skills. Oh, we're going to crack the eggs, we're going to beat the butter, we're going to mix it with the sugar. You're going to use all those vocabulary words to help a child see. And once again, let's just go to measuring right there when we're cooking. We're using a lot of measuring. Also, I know at our house, when you first start out and my daughter piles a huge thing of mashed potatoes and we'll say, are you really going to eat that much? Are you really going to eat that much? We are comparing to her appetite to what she's going to eat. And so when we see that, it makes sense to us, but as we start mixing them up with in our math terms and actual math, but do we use those every day? Okay, where do we use one-to-one correspondence in the kitchen? Allison? Can you think of? I put everyone on the spot,
Not sure.
Okay, the one thing that I'm thinking of, and in the kitchen is a little hard with one-to-one correspondence, is, who's coming for dinner? Who's going to be here? How many places do I need to set? How many chairs? How many tables? How many? So that's a good one-to-one correspondence. And as I'm sitting here thinking too, I'm trying to think what other times do we one-to-one correspondence? And it's usually dessert, once again, he got the bigger piece, how come he got more, or, he got 2 cookies, those kind of things. So one-to-one correspondence is equal, it's the same, okay? Counting, where do we count in the kitchen? Liz, can you think of any place where we count in the kitchen?
Well, I know that when we make things, if they're stirring, I'll say, let's stir it 10 times or 15 times, because then he'll count how many times to stir. And it may not need that actual amount, but I just think of a number to get him to count it.
Yeah, and for me, it's sort of the same thing as when we're counting how many cups. Let's put this cup, and showing the numbers on the measuring cup too. Okay, and then the last one, sorting. Where do we sort in the kitchen? Allison, I'm going to pick on you again.
All the time in the fridge. I sort my groceries.
Okay.
Bread on one shelf or...
Okay,
Yeah.
All right. One of the best, and we talked about this again in another workshop about sorting, is putting silverware away. They really, children can have that sorting experience. When you're doing different math activities, point out what you're doing. Say, oh, we're measuring, and look at, we're comparing 1 cup and a half a cup. The one thing about measuring is what we measure so many different things, and an hour is different than a cup. And the counting, our measuring system is not very, we change it up, we mix it up. So it's very hard for children to learn to measure a lot, because when we're measuring time versus when we're measuring other, like a cup, it's very, very different. And so measuring is one of the hardest things for children. And then when we get to math, we start to measure something else also, depending on that. So can you see where basic vocabulary terms sometimes can mix us up, as if we say, I want you to give me a one-to-one correspondence for 1/2. But if your child knows that, they'll know, oh, I want it to be equal. So as you know these words, you'll be able to help your children in school before they even start school. We're going to take some PBS shows that have basic math ideas, and we're going to use the learning triangle. Now, Kezia, do you remember what the learning triangle is at all?
Nope.
Okay, because this is Kezia's very first time, so she's going to be learning with us. What we're going to do is we're going to view a clip about a basic math idea, which is colors. Okay, and then we're going to read a book about colors, and then we're going to do an activity. As you watch television, remember, if you want it to be educational, Mr. Rogers says that television becomes educational once the television is turned off. And so that's where the doing or doing something after it's off really enforces what we've talked about. Otherwise, it's just a good source of entertainment. But if you want it to really cement in, then you will actually do our learning triangle. And by the time we're done, Kasia, you're going to be able to repeat what the learning triangle is. So let's view a clip about colors.
Green, red, green, red!
Then the farmer walked between them again. But this time she walked the other way.
Red! Green! Red! Green! Huh?
Now, I'm going to give you a little background on that show. Is there, as you saw a hat, and on one side it was green and on one side it was red. And so when they walked, they thought, oh, it's this color. But then when he turned around, then they said it was the other. But right there, we did not have a show about, okay, children, we're going to look at this color. Some of our shows are like that. But you can look at that and then you can go, oh, let's find some green. Red, green, red. Now, I like this book for a lot of different reasons. I like this book because when you look at it, it has a different type of texture. It looks like finger painting, doesn't it? It reminds me of finger painting. And it's about all different kinds of colors. Now, this cat is going to ask you the question, what's my favorite color? Look at all those colors he's going to let you choose from. Cat's color. I'm a cat. What's my favorite color? Is it green? Well, green is the grass where I do like to walk. Oh, what about pink? Pink are the petals of my favorite flowers. Oh, is it black? Black is the night where the bats swoop and soar. Is it red? Oh, red is the rug where I snooze by the fire. Well, that sounds cozy. Is it yellow? Yellow is the sand on a sunny beach. Is it purple? Well, purple is the yarn I tangle with my claws. Is it brown? Brown is the earth where I dig my holes. Oh, what about blue? Blue is where I chase the birds. Oh, white. White are the clouds floating in the sky. Is it orange? Yes, because orange is the color of my mother. Isn't that fun? Now you are going to make your favorite color, and what you have in front of you, you should have a little piece of waterless color paper. And let me see, you have so many activities today. It looks like this, okay? And this particular watercolor paper this is like waterless, but what you'll do is you're going to do something different. So as I explain the rules, or what I'd like you to do is I want you to look at your color on your finger paints. And I want you to pick your favorite color, just one of the favorite colors from there. And then I want you to scoop it out and make it finger paint on this. Now, this all looks white, but as soon as you put it on the paper, it will turn that color. And I want you to use all 10 of your fingers, and I want you to finger paint just that color on the piece of paper, okay? So I want you to take just one color. I know it's hard. Everyone goes, oh, I want to do all the colors. But for this activity, and Kasia's doing a great job, just take a scoop and just scoop it out on the paper and start finger painting. Play like you're 5 again. You know, when's the last time you finger painted? You can finger paint with shaving cream. It's a great way to clean your counters. Some moms even let their kids finger paint with pudding. It's a little sticky. Finger paint in the bathtub. Oh, and Allison's making a flower with her thumbprints. Very, very good. Kasia's making a palm tree. She wishes she was on the beach. Liz has got that whole thing blue. Thank you. All, yeah. And you know what? With children, you would want a much bigger piece of paper. Now, as you're finishing up, the activity that I'm going to have you do when you go home is I want you to start doing a one-to-one correspondence, and I want you to start matching other things that you find in the environment to that color. Now, if your paper was bigger, which it should be, it would be much easier. I actually saw this activity, a preschool teacher in Springville actually did this activity with this book, and she had the kids do their favorite color finger painting, and then they went home, and during the next few days they found other things in their house, in their environment, that matched that color, and they were able to then bring it back and talk about the different things. When I did this with my daughter, she was trying to convince her dad that she really wanted a cat. And so she actually had her dad cut out the paper in the shape of a cat's face, and then she found different things like a milk carton lid to make eyes, and yarn for whiskers, and she found different things to make actually a cat's face. So she was able to take that and take it a little bit further. But for kids, for younger kids, if they would just start finding, oh, you know, this is, and that's sort of a pinkish red, isn't it? So it might be hard to find. And you're actually going to start looking, okay, does it really match? What color green that? And then you can start saying, oh, there's all different colors of green, or maybe there's different colors of blue. But can you see how easy this is? And colors are a great way to do some patterns, to do a lot of different math activities. We'll just stop right here and let you wash your hands up. The next learning triangle we're going to do is a counting one. Remember, counting's really easy to do. We do it all the time. It's a little bit harder to explain. The one thing that children are being able to do more and more in school are actually having things to help them count. I remember when I was in school, if we ever had to think of what's 5 plus 5 and had to use our fingers, we were hiding them under the table as we were doing that. Now teachers actually will have the number charts for children to see the patterns. They'll have things that they'll actually be able to use. They'll let them use marks on their paper to actually give them the literal concept of what that is. Now, one thing that we have talked about right when I started is that numbers or counting is a pattern. One thing follows another. And so when a child can see that pattern and visualize it, they have a lot easier time with it. This is a favorite clip from mine when my children were little with a Barney, 5 in the bed and the little one said roll over. So we'll watch it. If you know it, you can sing along with it even. Okay, here we go.
5 in the bed and the little one said roll over, roll over. They all rolled over and one fell out.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Oh, boy.
4 in the bed and the little one said roll over, roll over. They all rolled over and one fell out.
Oh, whoops! Oh, too bad.
3 in a bed and the little one said roll over, roll over. They all rolled over and one fell out.
Oh, there he goes. Oh, boy. Okay.
2 in a bed and the little one said roll over, roll over. They all rolled over and one fell out.
Oh. You okay?
1 in a bed and the little one said, alone at last.
We're going to look at a couple counting books, and there's a couple different themes that I want to show you. The first one is a lot like the clip we just saw. Instead of 5 in the bed, this is 10 in the bed. And the one thing I like about this book is it actually will show the different how many there are that you can actually count, like when Holly and Liz was saying that we would count with our children, but also it shows the number up here. This will come first. They're going to be able to actually count how many. This will come last. Okay, so don't worry about this as much, but this will actually show how many. And so it has exactly the same thing, just adding 5 more. Another book that I want to talk about is Anno's counting book. Now this one actually starts with 0, which is a very good book to try to find. There's not a lot of books that start with 0. Also, it has these cubes that they'll be using in school quite a bit to help them visualize the numbers. And so there's nothing colored here, and there's nothing on the picture. And once again, you have the visual representation, the numerical representation. Here's the cube, and everything on this page just has 1 and then the number 1. It's a fun book for all stages. I really like this where they start to do these numbers because they'll be using these a lot in school. Another thing about this book is it goes to 12. So we're starting over. So children, this is called a base 10. So we always start with 10. This is a base 10, and we're going to start all over. And so this is a very age-appropriate book. If they're very young, you can just count all the number 12s on that page. And then it actually has some things about numbers as a child even gets a little bit older. So a really fun book. A lot of books, you don't even have to have a number book. You can just start counting things in the book to giving it value. The activity that you have is, once again, in your different activities, and it is an actual 10 in the bed that you can make. This is 5. I know this is 5. But children can actually take them out, that there's 4. Then there's 3, and then they can start as they get older actually doing the addition and subtraction. If I had 3 and I added 1 more, how many would I have? Now, if you are like me, if this came into my home, it would get stepped on, broken. One of our moms or dads might get lost. And so these are the type of things when my children were littler, I would have a bag in the back of my car that they could use more of car or when we went someplace. Like if we went to a restaurant, we would pull these kind of things out. Because if I took this in my house, it would get lost. Is that the same with you? And so, but these are really good activities to do in the doctor's office or while you're waiting. And they're very easy to make. We've got one for you to take home, for you to decorate and make your little 5 in the bed. It's the same thing as 5 little monkeys, that different things. Isn't this easy? And children really enjoy doing activities like this. But as they're having fun, they're really learning. Shapes are something we see every single day. It's something that children learn very quickly. There's things that they actually will start to write and actually experiment with them. One thing that we know now is very different when my older children were going to school, for now children entering school, is that there are several shapes that we need to know by the time they leave first grade. Some of them are, the standards, the circle, okay, and the rectangle, and the square. Now, most of us grew up with this being a diamond. Now it is called a rhombus. And so when your children come home and say, I need to find a rhombus, you need to know what that rhombus is, okay? Another 2 that we've added is the parallelogram and the trapezoid. These are things that we are now teaching in school. The different shapes. We want children to know their shapes. We're going to watch a clip about shapes and different shapes as you try to guess what they are. So many PBS shows have the example where they do something and then they have the children in the audience answer. So it gets them thinking and it gives them a second to say what is going to happen. Try to find shows like that where children are actually actively involved. Once again, when you're watching it with them, ask the questions. Then try to find some shapes that are in the room. Those are very simple activities, but that's where things really cement in with children is when they see them with their everyday life. So as you watch this, watch how they actually take a few seconds so that the kids can process what they're trying to teach.
Haha, there is the shape, and I bet you know what this shape is. Now let's see if Forgetful knows. Forgetful, do you know what this shape is called?
It's a whatchamacallit. Oh, no, I got it wrong, though.
Oh, that's okay. Next time, just remember that if this side and this side are the same, and if this side and this side is the same, and if all the corners are the same, then it's a rectangle. Hey, say, I bet you know what this shape is called, don't you? How about you, Forgetful? What is this shape?
Now, I know that there is definitely a whatchamacallit.
No. No. Elmo, kids, what is this?
A triangle. Yeah.
Right.
They gave you lots of time to process that. Now, in your baggie that has your 10 in the bed, or 5 in the bed, sorry, I keep saying 10, your 5 in the bed, you should have a piece of yarn. And you can do this 2 different ways, and I'm just going to actually keep mine not tied because of another activity I want to talk about. But you can tie it in the middle. Once again, this is something that if this got brought in my house, it would be like, what's this yarn doing on the floor? Who put this yarn on the floor? And so, but in the car, when we go places, you could say, I would like you to make a shape that has no sides. No sides. What shape would that be? Oh, Rachel in the back has got that already, and Teresa, she's got a circle. Okay, I want you to make a shape that has 4 sides. Could be a lot of different things. Okay, it could even be our parallelogram, okay, or our trapezoid. Okay, I want to make a shape that has 3 sides. For our learning triangle, look at, we have it right here in front. We've got the view, review, and do, our learning triangle. Okay, now Mary was talking about, as when we were off camera, that geometry is something that you can see everywhere you go in life. Now, for my children and for myself, it was something that I guess I didn't see that as Mary did. But I would take my son when he was in geometry and had decided that he couldn't do math, and he was snowboarding, and I said, you use all of your geometry when you snowboard. You do a 360, you do a 180, you do certain angles. Now, one thing where I think that geometry, when we get to geometry, sometimes confuses a lot of people is if we have a line, most of the time in math, it's an infinite number. When we speak about geometry, we have a certain set of numbers, and it's 0 to 180, okay? And so we're changing. And I know that when I would work with high school students that were young mothers, I would say that, and they'd be like, what? And I would say, in geometry, we're working with 100 and on a line with 180 degrees. We don't call them numbers anymore, we call them degrees. And so if I had this line up, and it was 180 degrees, and I had a 90-degree angle, which is exactly half, where would that be, Mary? Show me on my line where 90 degrees would be, exactly in half. So there's your angle, okay? Another thing is that you can start seeing this very representation when you use things like this. Now, we are not working with 3-year-olds doing angles, but we can show them what obtuse and acute are, because obtuse is the angle. Would you just, Keisha, just put, yeah, maybe do it right up here. So that would be a very wide, or if it was down, that would be the acute. So we could start seeing those kinds of different vocabulary words. But shapes do lead to geometry. And so as you're looking at different shapes, now a book that I want to show you is called Woof. No shapes in that title, is it? Woof, woof. What? In fact, legs. Now what? Bodies. Now what? Tails. Now what are we going to have? Heads. Now what? Ears. Now what? Mouths. Oh, look at all those cutouts. Puppies! Isn't that fun? All those different shapes. Once again, an activity that we have that when you go to our website that you can download and use yourself is our different shapes or the tangrams. And you have these, we've just used the foam cutouts that you can take different shapes and make different objects. So children can start working with those shapes and understanding them and liking them. Shapes are something that we do use. Remember that you do need to know that a diamond is called a rhombus, and that the parallelogram and the trapezoid is something that we've added. Have a lot of fun with shapes, do a lot of activities. They are all over our world. Our last clip that we're going to practice the learning triangle, where we view a clip, review it with a book, and do an activity, is with sequencing. Now remember at the very first I said sequencing is where one thing follows another, and it happens all the time in life. But in this particular clip, we are actually showing how they're making something. You can find a lot of sequencing activities that are going on usually in a lot of shows that might not be trying to teach that concept. Right now, PBS has great math and science shows that will actually really focus on those themes. Curious George is one show. Sid the Science Kid, Dinosaur Train. They have a lot of math-based activities, but even just your Barney, where there was the 10 in the bed, that is still, even when we were counting, it's where one thing follows another also. So let's watch this clip where one thing follows another, sequencing.
This way. What's in there? It's water?
It looks like water, but it's sap from inside the maple tree. See? It comes out here.
Caillou was surprised that something like that could come out of a tree.
First, we need to collect some sap.
I want to help.
Okay, partner. Can you carry this to the sleigh?
Can I do it?
Sure, go ahead. Look at this. It's become maple syrup.
Caillou couldn't believe it. All the watery maple sap was now thick maple syrup.
Can I taste it?
It's really too hot right now. Besides, I need to boil it longer for a surprise. Perfect. Stay back. This is very hot.
Why are you pouring that on the snow?
The snow cools it off. This is my favorite treat of all. It's maple toffee. Try this, partner.
Yum! What a treat!
Do you want some help there, Caillou?
Caillou was determined to get the toffee by himself. He couldn't wait to taste it.
Sticky!
One thing is, children, that's a sequence that you'll have to learn is they want to do it by themselves. A couple books that we have that have sequencing, and because of the length of this, I'm not going to read it, but it's Inside a Barn, where you add one object after another. I know one of you were talking that this is one of your children's favorite books, where because they can say what comes next. Here is a barn in the country. Here is a mouse that squeaked in the hay inside the barn in the country. Here is, oops, skipped a page, which would be bad. Here is the mouse that squeaked in the hay and woke up the horse that whinnied and neighed inside a barn in the country. It's a sequence where one thing follows another and it just keeps adding and adding things. These are not only very good math books where it's a sequencing, but also very good books for children to learn to read, because by the time you've read it 3 or 4 times, they see the picture and they can read it themselves and they know what happens next. With sequencing, one thing that we're going to do is actually we're going to take a sequence of all the math things that we've learned today. We're going to sequence all those together, and we're going to use it with some, actually some small candies. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to do something that we sometimes do to children a lot, is that we make them estimate or guess, and we don't give them any boundaries. Once again, we need to, when we ask them to estimate, we need to give them some boundaries. So I want you for your little candies to guess how many are in this bag. Now, as you guess, I'm going to give you some boundaries. There's more than one, and I've never seen more than probably 30. So I want you to guess or estimate. How many have ever asked a child or seen those cute little first grade kindergarten things is, you know, how do you make a cake? You know, they don't really have the boundaries. I know with my children, they would say, if I had $10, I would buy you a car, you know. And so it's good for them to know, oh, if you had $10, you could buy. And as you are in the store looking at saying, look, this cost $1, so you could buy 10 of them. Or this cost $5, so you could buy 2 of them. So I want you to estimate with your little candies, and I want you to decide about how many you think is in a bag. Okay? And then what I want you to do is I want you to open your bag, and I want you to count how many you have and see how close you came. If you've already made your guess, has everyone guessed?
I was right.
That was right.
After you subtracted one. If you guessed, I have never seen a bag more than 22. Does we have anybody have 22? Okay, so 22. Okay, so we just counted. We gave each candy some value. What I want you to do now is sort them by colors. Some of you had already done that. Isn't it interesting? We just sort of automatically do that. Now we're going to make a pattern, and at the very beginning of this workshop I said that a true pattern has to have at least 3. Okay, it has to repeat itself at least 3 times. And so what I want you to do is I want you to look at your M&Ms, and if you have any that have less than 3, I want you to take them away because we're not going to be using them because we couldn't make a true pattern. Now, using those, the rest of your colors, using 3 of those colors, I want you to make some kind of pattern where it repeats itself at least 3 times. So once again, you have to have 3 of one, and you could only, if you only have 3, you only could use that color 1 time. Okay, let's see what a couple of your patterns are. Holly has a red, yellow, blue, green. Wow, you had a lot with 3 in it. And in the back, Teresa has what we call an AABC pattern because she uses 2 of the same colors. So she has a green, green, that's an AABC because she uses 4 different colors. When your children are in kindergarten and in 1st grade, they will be asked to make patterns using letters where they'll do an AAB pattern. So 2 of the same color or object. If it was winter, they'd probably do a snowman, snowman, snowflake, and they would do that pattern because that helps them when they get older understand algebra a little bit more. So they will be doing those patterns as soon as kindergarten hits. So when you understand patterns and the sequencing and the counting and the shapes, you'll be able to help your children. Math is every day, isn't it? It's everywhere. And those of us that feel a little math impaired, when we understand the lingo or the language, it really helps answer the questions, doesn't it? And so look for math experience every day with your children, whether they're taking a bath or whether they're getting ready for bed, wherever they're at. Take those math terms that we've used, point them out so that they will like math when they go to school.